The oldest living trees on our planet are thousands of years old. They have lived through eras that we can only read about in our history books. There are trees on our planet today that have literally seen civilizations rise and fall. Older trees are wisdom keepers holding energy and information. I believe that similar to people, the longer a tree has been around, the more wisdom that it cultivates. There is a lot more to these magical beings than people are aware of. I want to share a personal story that I experienced with trees. One day while I was out on a walk, it was a work day and I was taking a break. I just remember on this particular day, all of a sudden, I remember I was walking past the plants on the ground and I noticed that they had this aura about them that I could see in my mind's eye and also sense. There was a sense of knowing of what it was. And then I looked at the tree branches overhead and I was feeling healing energy emanating from the trees and from the plants around me. I could both see it internally and had a sense of knowing. And I had the further awareness that they were always emitting this healing energy, this healing frequency. And that just by walking past them, we would be receiving this energy from them. No wonder forest bathing has become so popular. A few months ago, I was walking through a forest on Jeju Island, and when I got to a certain area in the forest, there were all these wooden recliner chairs that were in the middle of the forest. There were a couple spots like this in this particular forest, actually. And you can just sit on one of the chairs and relax on it. And let me tell you, this is a whole nother experience than simply walking through a forest, which is great too. But there is something remarkable about being able to sit or lay in the reclining chair and look up at the trees that are above you. And just taking that in is one of the most relaxing things I think I've ever done. I highly recommend trying this and experiencing it for yourself. Another experience I had with trees occurred in a dream. In my dreams, I receive information, insights, and teachings at times, and this was one of those types of dreams. I was in a grove of tall trees with skinny, light grayish white trunks, and I had an internal knowing that they were young trees. Later, while writing my dream down in a journal, the word birch came to me. I didn't know what birch trees look like, so I went online to look them up, and sure enough, they looked just like the trees I'd been seeing in my dreams. I have birch essential oil, and I wondered if I was being invited to work more closely with birch at that time. Then, while I was either still dreaming or just waking up, the words energy transference came into my awareness. I knew that it meant that just by being or walking in the midst of the trees, I was receiving their energy. Later, as I thought about the dream more, I realized that just as I'd be receiving their energy, the trees would also be receiving my energy. Because after all, wouldn't it work both ways? Just as I would be receiving their energy, the trees would have the benefit of receiving, interacting with, and resonating with my energy and the energy of whoever has passed by them throughout the ages. Like an energy transference. Today we have the privilege of interacting with trees who have interacted with people that were alive in the 1200s, 500, the year 300, 100, much, much earlier than that. If you ask me, that is pretty incredible. The next thing I was shown in the dream was a large tree with a very thick trunk. It was a different type of tree than the younger ones, and it was also an older tree. I got the words record keeper. Older trees have been storing energy and information for such a long time. Considering the many trees on our planet that are not just hundreds, but that are thousands of years old, it makes sense that they are truly the record keepers. Further in my dream, the younger trees seemed less conscious while the older trees seemed very conscious. It reminds me of people on their spiritual journey. In my teens and early 20s, I was living more unconsciously and then began becoming more conscious and understanding the deeper layers to life, like how the world wasn't just the 3D reality that I saw around me, and I began to recognize the world was actually an energetic world that we couldn't physically see, but that we could interact with by using our intuition. I believe that older trees have a larger consciousness and living presence, a denser consciousness and life force that has cultivated in the trees over time. I can often sense this thicker, more palpable energy just by looking at these trees and being in their presence. According to neuroscientist Tara Swart, when you walk past trees, particularly pines, cypresses, firs, palms, cedars, and so on, they release phytoncides that interact with your immune system and boost the release of natural killer cells that help you to fight off cancers. Similarly, researcher Dr. Ching Li, a medical professor in Tokyo, found that when people walk through or stay overnight in forests, they often exhibit changes in the blood that are associated with protection against cancer, better immunity, and lower blood pressure. Further, there's lots of other research out there that shows that walking in nature can reduce stress and anxiety, enhance our immune system, and boost our mood. So real quick, I want to thank you for watching this video, and if you're enjoying the content, please like and subscribe because it helps this content reach more people. So another way that trees call out to us is through our awareness. There was a period of time that spanned over many months where pine trees would call out to me. I remember I'd be driving down the road and I'd have certain thoughts on my mind, important things I was thinking about, and as I was thinking about the thought, I'd simultaneously notice a pine tree that I've never noticed before, even though I've taken that, same route many times. And it would be a confirmation of sorts to me that my thoughts were being heard. I remember one time when I was on a walk with my dog, I was looking at the ground when I noticed a pine cone sitting there directly in the middle of my path. And it seemed odd given the area that I was in. And when I looked up, there was this tall, slender pine tree, like only a few feet away from me that I would have otherwise missed. And it very much felt like a way for the pine trees to get my attention in that moment. The pine trees were talking to me, calling me, like that moment when something suddenly becomes more focused in your awareness, as if a lens was adjusted and you begin to see and notice what you hadn't before. The pine tree's most prominent message for me was steadfastness. That was the word that kept coming to me. Holding on through it all, to keep going and continuing to do what I was doing. I'd been trying to make changes in various areas of my life at the time, and things hadn't been transitioning in the way or timing I would have hoped. It felt like for so long I'd been chipping away daily, little bits at a time, with no big sign of progress. Trusting that things would work out, having faith and holding the belief that everything would work out, steadfastness, continuing to keep working towards my goals. As I continued to work towards my goals, it felt like the pine trees were offering me their wisdom, guidance, and support. This experience with the pines served as a wonderful reminder that communication can occur in many different forms if we are open to it. Sometimes the trees just call out to us, like with the pines. Other times I've been invited to go to specific areas in nature, or I felt called to take hikes where I knew I'd be around certain types of trees. Several years ago, I felt called to go to Sequoia National Park. And it wasn't just about being around trees or in nature, but rather it was a very specific draw to that location, to be around the giant redwood trees. The energy was palpable and I felt like they were inviting me to them, to be in their space and in their presence. So from Sequoia National Park, I drove into Kings Canyon National Park and I stopped at Grant Grove, which is a easy about 1 mile loop trail with a lot of really, really old and ancient giant redwood trees. As I walked around the large redwood grove, I began noticing how each tree differed from the next. They each seemed to have a different look and personality to them. At that time, an idea came to me, and I began mentally and energetically communicating with each tree, asking them to tell me something about themselves. From each tree, I began to sense something that differed about it from the other trees around it. I walked along energetically talking to the trees, and as they shared something with me, I in turn shared something with them. I gave blessings and admiration in an energy exchange for the gifts they shared with me. At another point on my trip, I was on a hike and I took a detour off the beaten path to meditate at the base of a giant sequoia tree. I kept intuitively sensing that the ancient sequoia trees are the record keepers throughout the ages. They hold internal wisdom, guidance, light vibration, and have a strength about them. I received the information that a long time ago there was a brush fire and it swept across the giant sequoias, and they united at the roots to protect themselves from harm. They offer guidance by virtue. Nature is very healing, and each plant, tree, etc. has its own unique vibration and healing frequency. Simply being in the presence of the giant sequoia redwood trees was both a healing and restorative experience. Have you ever found yourself wondering how to communicate with trees? Well, it's not as difficult as you might think. First, you can hug trees. Put your arms around them and give them a hug. Every time I do this, I feel really good, and the trees appreciate it too. You can put your back against the tree and lay your head against it. So I do this sometimes when I'm on walks. I'll go over to a tree and I'll just put my back against it and then rest my head against it, and it just feels really good. You really feel like you're absorbing whatever healing energies are there from that tree, and it's one of my favorite ways to connect with trees. You can put your hands on them. Our hands are portals. They are transmitters where we send and receive energy. So we transmit and receive energy using our hands. And if you put your hands on the tree or even hover them, a few inches or feet, whatever is more comfortable for you, away from the tree, just using your intention, you can send and receive energy. So like an energy exchange. You can energetically talk to them in your mind and through the feeling system of your body. Say hello just like you would to a person. Compliment them, thank them, bless them. Send love and light through your heart to them. Ask them questions if you want to. Additionally, to form a connection with trees, even if you're not in the same space as them, you can always look at a photo of them, so online, or trees that you've visited before. So if you've been to a national park or been hiking and you took pictures of trees or video, and you can go back and look at that. And a lot of times for me, when I do that, it just brings up the feeling that I experienced when I was there. So it takes me back into that vibration and into that frequency. So that's a good way to do it. Thank you for watching, and if you have any unique experiences or ways of interacting with trees, feel free to mention them in the comments below. See you next time.